Parade is very important to a lot of people and to bring a lot of people together.
Pride Parade, like, who doesn't want to be gay and proud and come here?
The liveliness, the togetherness, the love, the community, it all comes together and show that we are together in this.
A flood of people despite a deluge of rain. Nothing could stop the party in Toronto today at the city's annual Pride Parade. The downpour stopped just in time for the start of the march, and that was as good as sunshine for the 120 groups taking part in this year's Pride Parade and the thousands of people lining the streets. The rain did eventually return, but it didn't seem to dampen the spirits of participants or spectators, at least not until talk turned to safety in the LGBT community. Natalie Collada explains.
Joy, support, and a sense of freedom were all on display at Canada's largest Pride Parade.
As someone who comes from a small town, Pride just represents the fact that I can find a community in a place where, I didn't find community before.
Just pretty much being who you are.
But this year, there was also an undercurrent of sadness. For a minute, the parade stopped and people paused to remember the victims of alleged serial killer Bruce McArthur. This is the first Pride Parade since the remains were found of 8 men with ties to Toronto's gay village, several from South Asian and Middle Eastern communities.
It had to take a white man to go missing before we paid attention to everything else, so that's when race came into it. It felt like the police took it a little bit seriously then.
The belief that police didn't take the gay village disappearances seriously deepened tensions between the force and the community. Today, this Toronto police officer says they want to fix the problem.
We're still not doing everything that we possibly can do, and we do need to do a better job. What we need to do is take ownership of our mistakes and move forward from there and get better at our connection with the community, get better at listening to the community.
Still, Toronto police were asked not to march in uniforms in this year's parade. Tonight, a separate march was held, its participants in black to highlight the community's safety concerns.
Well, some of us might feel comfortable and some of us might feel safe. Many of us do not. And Bruce McArthur has highlighted the fact that, in fact, members of different kinds of communities perhaps don't feel as able to come out as others, and we're trying to change that.
This year's Pride was all about taking back the streets to feel safe again, so wounds can heal and celebration won't have to be tinged with sadness.
Hawaii's Kilauea volcano is showing no signs of letting up, with lava flows again creeping dangerously close to homes. Volcanologists said an explosion at the summit late on Saturday produced energy equivalent to a magnitude 5.3 earthquake. The eruption, which began at the end of April, is the most destructive in the United States since Mount St. Helens in 1980, which killed nearly 60 people. No one has died in Hawaii, but at least 600 homes have been destroyed.
Now, we recently witnessed that weird spectacle of Ali Velshi and MSNBC reading scripture to attack the administration's immigration policy. Well, that followed Attorney General Jeff Sessions quoting the Bible to justify that policy. So all of this has sparked a really big debate. It's really interesting among Christian leaders over immigration. So let's discuss that now with a pair of very distinguished religious leaders. I'm delighted they're both with us. Dr. Daryl Scott of the President's Faith Advisory Council and Dr. Kent Engel, President of Southeastern University. Great to see you both. All right, Dr. Engel, let's start with you. You're actually, I think, a supporter of the president's, but you disagree with this policy that initially at least separated families, child in one area, parents more in a formal immigration detention. Why?
Well, sure. Well, I appreciate President Trump's leadership, and he's trying to do the right thing. He wants to uphold the laws of the land. There's no doubt about that. I think the issue there was to not only provide protection, which is what he wants to do as it relates to borders, but I think also the issue has to, you have to look at compassion. How do you bring the human element into this situation so that you can provide human dignity and respect and care and compassion and provide an element that gives both? And I think that's the thing that a lot of Americans are hoping that our president will step up in a way, along with the Congress, the House, the Senate. Our leaders will do the right thing and provide that protective and compassionate pieces to this legislation.
Pastor Scott, this is Bishop Michael Curry, who was just slamming Jeff Sessions for invoking the Bible. Let's watch.
For a Christian to quote Romans 13 over Jesus of Nazareth, as if Jesus of Nazareth doesn't exist, that it seems to me is highly problematic, and it's just flat out wrong. It's unbiblical, it's unchristian, and it's un-American.
Pastor, well, your reaction to that, and I have something to say about welcoming the stranger. Go ahead.
Well, listen, it's not unreasonable to refer to scriptures, especially if you're a Bible believer. It's not unusual to refer to scriptures as a basis to validate any actions that you engage in. Once again, if you're a Bible believer, we oftentimes use scripture to confirm or validate actions or activity that we engage in. I don't see anything wrong with Jeff Sessions utilizing that scripture, because that scripture simply says to obey the civil authorities. Notice something. Jesus nor the Apostle Paul never endorsed sedition or rebellion or violent uprising against Rome. And in using that scripture, he was saying that in order to advance our cause, violence is not the way. Obey the laws of the land so they won't have a reason to accuse us for any wrongdoing. Obey the laws of the land and put other matters into the hands of God, and he'll work it out. Pastor Engel, the Bible calls on us to welcome the stranger, and it's very powerful. Welcome them to your table. If someone, invite a stranger to your home for meals and so forth. But the Catholic bishops seem to take that to mean open borders. I mean, they got a really big wall around the Vatican. It's a beautiful wall, really nice wall. But that means anyone who steps foot over the border has to be processed into the country and released. How is that welcoming the stranger according to biblical text? That does not mean to be devoid of all laws of the land, does it?
Absolutely. And I go back to that passage the Attorney General referred to in Romans 13, talking about, obey the laws of the land. When you talk about the context of God's law is always for protection. It's always for peace. It's always for harmony. And so that's why when you look at the issues that we are facing with immigration reform, all the issues, challenges that we have seen over the last couple of weeks, you have to have a come-together approach that covers all the issues of, you have to look at the issue of collaborating on providing security at the wall. You have to look at issues of compassion as it relates to bringing families together.
We all do what we can to donate to organizations that help people on the ground in their home countries. I mean, so many Christian organizations, faith-based groups in Guatemala, Central America, South America, Africa, around the world. That's where we as individuals can make a difference through our faith, through our churches and our organizations, correct? It doesn't mean that we have to completely smash our own rule of law and say, okay, you have a really sad life. I understand it's horrible. So we have to allow you to come into the country no matter how you come in. But I want to play something for you. And I want to get Pastor Scott on this. This is a very liberal priest known as Father James Martin. He's not a big fan of Trump, to put it lightly. This is what he said.
No one wants to be a refugee, no one wants to be a migrant, but they do it out of great love for their families. They have a lot of guts to do it, and I think it's up to us to welcome them. I think the problem with a lot of these Christians who are saying that they're reading the Bible is I don't know what Bible they're reading, because the Bible I read has Jesus always reaching out to those who are on the margins, including and most especially migrants and refugees.
Well, Pastor Scott, a lot of Americans feel like they're on the margins. Like 2 blocks from where we're broadcasting from, there are a lot of homeless on the street, literally 2 blocks from where we are. Your comments on
But
Father
listen,
Martin.
there's a difference between migrants, refugees, or illegal immigrants. The parents of these children know that they are committing a crime when they endeavor to sneak into this country. This country has a zero tolerance policy. They know that our president is hardline in regards to that, but they tried to sneak in anyway. Now, anyone, an American citizen, regardless of your race, creed, or color, if you are engaged in the commission of a crime and you are caught in the commission of this crime and you are apprehended and you have a child in your custody, that child is going to be removed from your custody and placed in the child services until either somebody comes and gets them or they're remanded over to whatever. And so I don't understand why we're taking any culpability for this crime that is being committed away from the parents and making it as if we're just grabbing kids and putting them in a concentration camp, because that is not the case at all. There's a crime being committed. The children are in the custody of the criminals.
And it's Donald Trump's fault. And it's Donald Trump's fault that a crime is being committed.
Because you told yourself, I'm going to sneak into America. I'm going to sneak into America despite the law, and I'm taking my child. I wouldn't even put my children at risk like that. I have grandchildren. I wouldn't even try to do that if I knew it was a zero policy.
A dangerous journey, that's for sure, up through Mexico. Phenomenal segment. Thank you both.
Young children being treated after an apparent nerve agent attack in Syria. The devastating effects all too obvious, as the deadly compound was reportedly dropped over the besieged city of Douma in April. Just one of a number of times that poisonous gases were used in Syria as Bashar al-Assad's forces sought to take control of rebel-held areas. Nearly a year and a half ago, there was this attack in Kuala Lumpur International Airport. The half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un targeted in full view of an unsuspecting public by VX nerve agent. He later died in hospital. Over in the UK, another targeted attack. A former Russian military officer and double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia poisoned. The substance in question, confirmed by investigators to be Novichok, a nerve agent developed by the Soviet Union. While such weapons have been widely banned since the end of the First World War, where it was used to devastating effect, routine condemnations by international leaders have done little to stop them. And the attacks in Syria have invariably been met with routine denials by Bashar al-Assad and his sponsor, the Russian government. And they've been seen as a provocation to the international chemical weapons watchdog. 11 member countries of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons called for an emergency meeting at its headquarters in The Hague to defend and strengthen the global ban on such nerve agents. Currently, the organization only determines whether such attacks have taken place, not who carried them out. They want to use the session to set up a new mechanism so the OPCW is able to assign blame for attacks carried out with banned munitions. The proposal would need a 2/3 majority to pass and would likely face challenges from Iran and Russia, which has previously criticized the OPCW in light of its findings in Syria as well as Salisbury. But there is an urgency to tackle the troubling spate of such dangerous and indiscriminate attacks. Attacks that have already cost the lives of too many civilians. Sonia Gallego, Al Jazeera.
Almost 350 migrants remain stranded on 2 ships in the Mediterranean. Lifeline, a German charity rescue ship, picked up 234 people off the coast of Libya on Thursday and still hasn't been allowed to dock anywhere. And on Friday, a cargo ship operated by Danish shipping line Maersk rescued another 113 migrants, also off the Libyan coast. The Alexander Maersk remains stranded off the coast of the Sicilian town of Pozzallo. Neither ship has been allowed to dock by Italy or Malta, the nearest EU states. On Monday, Italy's anti-immigration interior minister visited Libya and proposed setting up migrant reception centres there. Meanwhile, the migrants wait.
We are spending all our time trying to speak to everybody who wants to listen about this massive problem that we have. And that's our focus. That is to make people understand this is not sustainable. The people that we have rescued needs to be safely landed so that they can get the proper attention that they deserve. That's not something we can undertake, and therefore we need it to be resolved. We are talking about minutes and hours rather than days. We simply need to have it resolved now.
The ship had received a request from Rome's Maritime Rescue Coordination Centre on Friday to change its course after picking up a distress signal from a shipwrecked vessel.
Disorientated and dehydrated, these migrants have just been deported by Algerian border guards and dumped in neighbouring Niger. The nearest village is a 15-kilometre walk in the Sahara Desert, and they have no food or water. The UN Migration Agency says Algeria has expelled an estimated 13,000 migrants in this way in the last 14 months. Janet Kamara, who's Liberian, was pregnant when she was deported last month. She suffered a miscarriage while walking in the desert. She buried her baby in a shallow grave in the sand.
We lost our baby. Our baby was killed. Women were lying dead, men, because there's no water, no food, starvation, children, kids, and all. Other people got wounded. Other people got missing in the desert because they didn't know the way.
Another Liberian, Jules Dennis, filmed his deportation from a detention centre in Algeria.
This is where they have more than 5,000 Africans, sub-Saharan, being kept. If you can see some of the...
Together with a group of other migrants, they were loaded onto trucks and driven across the border to Niger.
I'm reporting live from the desert between Algeria and Niger. And as you can see, this is the convoy going over there. And it's a massive convoy, massively deporting blacks to a no man's land where anything can happen. You got women and children into these trucks.
Some migrants are rescued by a team like this one from the UN Migration Agency. Others die trying to make it across the desert.
They come by the thousands. I've never seen anything like it. There are even babies. They even expel pregnant women, women who give birth 1 or 2 weeks later. It's a catastrophe.
The Algerian government denies committing human rights abuses. It's ratified international treaties on human rights, and this was the Algerian Red Crescent last year, helping to transfer migrants to their home countries. The European Union has asked North African countries to do more to stop migrants headed north to Europe. The EU says it is aware of the mass deportations and says Algeria needs to comply with international law. Many of these migrants say their experience proves otherwise. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera.
The number of refugees worldwide hit a record high. A UNHCR report revealed on June 19, 68.5 million people were forcibly driven out of their homes by the end of 2017 because of war, violence, and human rights violations. The pace of people on the move is very high. UNHCR claims one person becomes displaced every 2 seconds. Syria continues to play a huge role in the crisis. However, UNHCR noted there was a significant growth in displacement in developing countries, including the Democratic Republic of Congo, South Sudan, and Myanmar. UN High Commissioner for Refugees Filipino Grandi said, "We are at a watershed where success in managing forced displacement globally requires a new and far more comprehensive approach so that countries and communities aren't left dealing with this alone." Grandi added, a new blueprint to better address the refugee crisis is on the works. For United News International in Metro Manila, I am Win Win.
In what has become a deadly election season for Mexico, 3 more politicians have been killed by unknown perpetrators in the last 2 weeks. At least 113 people, primarily candidates, have been murdered since last September as the country gears up for its July 1st presidential election. On June 8th, a congressional candidate for the ruling Institutional Revolutionary Party was shot dead as he posed for a photo. The incident occurred after an election debate where he reportedly pledged to tackle organized crime. The following day, a municipal councilor candidate for Isla Mujeres, an island near Cancun, was shot at her home and later died. Most recently, on June 14th, the mayoral candidate for the right-left coalition led by the National Action Party was gunned down after an event. The wave of violence has caused hundreds of candidates to withdraw from races out of fear of becoming a target. For United News International, I'm AJ Walker.
On June 23rd, militants in 11 settlements in southern Syria surrendered to the Syrian Arab Army SAA and declared their readiness to fight ISIS and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, formerly Jabhat al-Nusra, the Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement on June 24th. According to pro-government sources, about 900 members of the Free Syrian Army FSA joined the SAA. On June 24th, the SAA and the Tiger Forces liberated the villages of Khafsh Hamad and Jadal and entered the village of Busra al-Harir, northeast of the city of Dara. According to pro-militant sources, this advance was supported by the Russian airspace forces. On June 25th, clashes in the area continued. It is interesting to note that on June 23rd, the U.S. Embassy in Amman released a statement saying that the militants in southern Syria should not count on a U.S. military intervention in a situation in the area when they make decisions influencing their future. The statement comes amid reports that some FSA groups in the province of Dara have resumed negotiations with the Syrian government and Russia on a reconciliation agreement that would allow Damascus to restore its control of the area by a peaceful solution. On June 24th, the SAA repelled an attack of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham near the village of Zlin in northern Hama. However, after the attack, the situation in the area remained relatively calm. Tensions between the Thawar al-Raqqa Brigade and the rest of the US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces SDF have erupted in the city of Raqqa. The Thawar al-Raqqa Brigade says that the SDF security forces, Asaish, have surrendered its headquarters and have attacked some of its members. The current situation in Raqqa is another result of the tensions growing between the Kurdish-dominated SDF and local Arab factions formerly operating within the same group. At the same time, the SDF captured a large chunk of the area near the border with Iraq, reaching the Tel Safug border crossing. Thus, the group achieved a key goal of its operation in southern Al-Hasakah. According to pro-Kurdish sources, now the group is going to focus on combating ISIS in the Euphrates Valley and in the area north of Al-Bukamal.
The U.S. and South Korea have indefinitely suspended a pair of upcoming military exercises amid ongoing negotiations with North Korea. Pentagon spokeswoman Dana White announced on June 22nd that the U.S. has suspended 2 Korean Marine Exchange Program training exercises scheduled to occur in the next 3 months. White said that the decision was made, quote, to support implementing the outcomes of the Singapore summit. The announcement was widely anticipated following U.S. President Donald Trump's meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un earlier this month. In a surprise announcement after the summit, Trump said he decided to put joint exercises with South Korea on hold, while negotiations with Pyongyang were ongoing. However, White said that while these upcoming exercises had been nixed, additional suspensions, quote, will depend upon North Korea continuing to have productive negotiations in good faith. For United News International from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin Mangum.
When flight attendants needed help communicating with a blind and deaf passenger during a long flight, they put out a call for help, and a 15-year-old girl answered.
I pressed the call button, then she came and she was like, so we have a passenger on the plane who's blind and deaf. So like, do you know how to fingerspell? And I was like, yeah, I totally know how to fingerspell. They thought that he might like need something and they weren't sure how to communicate.
Clara Daly was on the flight from Boston to Los Angeles with the man named Tim. Through sign language, she asked him if he needed anything. He asked for water, but she says what he really wanted was some company.
He didn't need anything, he was just lonely and wanted to talk.
Clara spent the last hour of the flight just talking to Tim.
I was just kind of thinking wow, this is really cool, I hope I don't spell anything wrong.
Some who witnessed her act of kindness shared it on social media. And many are now praising Clara, who doesn't quite understand all of the attention she's getting.
Doing something like that is just what anyone would have done.
But hopefully her story will inspire others to go the extra mile to help someone in need.